right, so it looks like we're here for our first video podcast between two of the founding nomads of the Noetic, Randy Brown and Trace Pirtle. Randy is one of my best buddies from a long time ago, and for this first podcast. You may be wondering, where did this thing get its start? What's the genesis for Nomads of the Noetic? And Randy's going to jump in whenever he feels like it, because my memory on things may not be perfect, but I wanted to give you an idea and a story of how this started. And this is going to rewind. We'll take a mulligan on that, maybe not. We're going to rewind the tape all the way back to 2001. And I had been a professor at Sul Ross State University out in far west Texas, and had an opportunity to interview at Texas A&M International University in Laredo, Texas. And so I decided that I was going to go in stealth mode, get there a day before the interview, and kind of scope things out. And I wasn't looking to talk to anybody, right? And so I got there intentionally at a time when university was quiet. Go into this building, I'm thinking I'm going to go low on the radar and come to the elevator, push the elevator button, wait for the door to open, and as soon as the door opens, here walks out this character, man, that was just fascinating looking. Okay, I thought he looked like the cross between Santa Claus and the Buddha. Now, if we're looking at Randy Brown right now, you'll see what I mean. But this guy had the best spirit I had ever seen. So I'm starting to walk in, he's walking out, and Randy Brown says, "Can I help you find something?" Something like that. Well, I was still shocked because Randy at that time, from what I remember, had red round glasses, had some kind of a Hawaiian shirt on, big gauges in his ears, right? Remember he had shorts on, and I thought, well, this is odd. Who is this guy? Well, as it turns out, Dr. Randy Brown became one of my closest colleagues and friends from 25 years ago. So I wanted you to know about that, to know that how we got to this point started off somewhere, and that's really where it started off. And Randy, do you remember anything different about this part of the story?
I do remember something different about it.
Yeah, what do you remember?
Well, first of all, when you see a lone person stealthing around the campus,
Right.
that may not be considered as stealthy as you think.
Right, yeah, and especially since it was right before 9/11, right? I could have been a terrorist, who knows?
That's right. And right after we had the big scare of 2000 when all the computers were supposed to end the world.
Right.
We'd survived that, and here comes a stealthy man sneaking around the campus. No, he didn't concern me at all, actually. But I did see a man obviously looking for something. Little did I know, he was just scoping out where he had maybe the possibility of working in the future. And
Yes.
so I was delighted to be the welcoming committee that day, all by accident, because there's no telling why I was there.
Yeah.
Probably just scooting around or picking something up or bothering somebody else. But I did run into Trace, and Trace has it right on the nose in the sense that instant in that meeting, I met a fellow soul on a journey.
Yeah.
Where we would continually cross paths and continually dialogue about how we would traverse this pathway to understanding.
Yeah.
And I assume and hope that we both have helped each other along that pathway. Not to say that we have agreed on every issue we've encountered. Not to say that we've wound up in the same place on everything.
Yeah.
However, we have shared some of those barriers.
Exactly.
We've both carried the same kind of chainsaw to remove the logs
Yeah.
on occasion, and on occasion we've removed a log for someone else or for each other
Yeah.
in that journey.
Yeah.
So, and it has been a long journey, and it's not over.
No. No, that's right. And and when we look back at that time, the reason that I wanted to go back to that, from my side of it, is just for people to see that sometimes we engage in these interactions with people, we develop relationships, and we're not really sure about whether what we've talked about or whether that relationship is going to stick. Right? Does it have glue to it? Right? Will it generalize across time? 25 years, 50 years, whatever it is, into the future. And for me, this is something that really has glue. And so when Randy and I went back and we start becoming first we're colleagues, right? And then we start becoming friends, and going to at that time, well, Randy, that was the Starbucks, right? It was like one of the first Starbucks in Laredo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so, like a couple old philosophers, from the old times, old school philosophers, we would go hang out at Starbucks. And what was meaningful about that is, one minute we may be talking about spiritual issues, the next minute about class issues. Randy was in special education, I was in counseling. But there was always something new. So we talk about two people, having like professional, what we would call now shiny object syndrome, right? Or, attention deficit, disorders of one form or another. There was always something new to think about and to wonder about. And it was like this pure synoptic philosophy where we're engaged in the art of wondering, sometimes having more questions than answers, right? Which is
Yeah.
interesting for two professors, right?
Truly.
Right. And so, Randy, you can talk about this, but one of the things that was the most meaningful and memorable for me, and I wrote about this, I think, in the blog, about the genesis of Nomads of the Noetic, we were sitting there, we were talking about why students need to be in class. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. And
Right?
that becomes even more pertinent to me today.
Yeah.
As you know, we've talked recently about how all of the classes seem to have moved online,
Yeah.
and I now sit in front of a camera and record a video by myself and a lecture and pump it out for them to see.
Yeah.
And then I'm disappointed when I look at the analytics and find out that nobody watched it. That maybe they read the transcript, maybe, but rarely do they watch it. And I know that it's not as interesting as it was to be in class, but
Yeah.
so that the thought of what Trace spoke about really came to both of us as we really struggled about what it means to be a teacher,
Yeah.
um, in that highest level of what that word could mean.
Right.
Listening earlier to thoughts about the Buddha when he first came to his realization, and which was about suffering. And
Hmm.
but then his second realization was, I need to teach this.
Yeah.
And so that thought about how do you become that teacher? And so Trace and I talked often about that. But we also talked about the fact that there's an equation there, that there's a teacher and then there's students.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I think the roles are mixed, and I think that's intentionally good. I
Yeah.
think sometimes my students are better teachers than me, and they teach me more than I could ever teach them, and all
Yeah.
those other things happen. But what's interesting about that whole thing is, um, I I really came to the conclusion, and I know Trace feels this way as well. We talked about it often, but the truth is that none of that, what we called magic of learning,
Right.
could happen unless you were there.
Yeah. Right.
Students would always ask me, is it okay if I miss class?
Yeah.
And I've always had the same answer. I've never given a different answer. I always answer exactly the same. I always say no,
Right.
not okay. But if you have to miss class, you have to miss class. I understand.
Yeah.
You have permission to miss class, but it's not okay because you can never duplicate what happened in those moments of class because it only happens in real time.
Yep.
And maybe that's not true so much about teaching now. I don't know, but it's true about everything else in life
Yeah.
that moments of understanding and communication happen in real time. And
Yeah.
it's hard, even if you film something, it's hard for that to be experienced and duplicated unless that student was there.
Yeah.
They
That's
can't
right.
experience it because it's not live, it's not in the moment, and they're not in that shared energy of what transpired. So Trace and I had that discussion often about there is this thing called, and maybe Trace, you have a better term, but I never found one. I always called it magic.
Yeah.
And I only called it magic because it was something I could not explain rationally.
Right.
Like, as much as we know about the way the brain works,
Yeah.
I still don't get it.
Yeah.
But I recognize it when it happens. When I see somebody learn something or recognize something, and you just see it in their
Yeah.
eyes.
You do. That's right.
They refer to it as the lights come on.
Yep.
You see
Yep.
it happen,
Yeah.
but and though I witness it and see it, I still don't understand how. So
Yeah.
that's why I always called it magic. For me, that's a good term. We could have another one, but we still
Yeah.
wouldn't explain it.
Well, it's for me. It's stuck for this almost 25 years, and there's no better conceptualization, right, than that, right? And it is interesting. When my students would ask me too, we would have that discussion right after you and I talked, and it was all right. So what did you guys come up with? And so it's more than just, well, you pay your tuition, so you're supposed to be in class, right? Or even well, we're professors, and so we're paid a salary, so we have to be in class. And then we kind of come up to a little bit higher level. Well, all of our students have high stakes tests, right? Sometimes their certification, their maybe licensure, whatever it is. And so they need to be there to get that information because it may have, mean the difference between them passing and not yet. Um, but but that's something that transcends, and this is something that in the nomads of the Noetic, nomads of the Noetic, we would talk a lot about. Is it's not just about things that are happening down at this kind of basal level, just a physical level, the somatic level, and it's not even about what we think about and what we feel at the psychical level, but it's something that transcends that. It's in that noetic dimension, something that kind of straddles the fence between our thinking and our feeling, and something that's spiritual. And so when you tap into that occasionally, that's when the real magic happens. And people have to be there because it could, it may be Randy is the professor that brings the magic for that class, or it may be one of the students. But if you miss it, you just missed it. You can't make it up, no extra credit, none of that stuff, right? And so maybe that's what Randy and I are hoping also for this podcast is that you'll feel comfortable enough to come in. Maybe there'll be some magic. We're hoping that you're going to participate in this so you can bring the magic. But one way or the other, it'll be this shared journey where we're going along. Just like Randy said, sometimes, he may be the teacher, you'll be the student, I'll be the student, and other times all of those roles will be reversed. But we've got something to say that's going to be meaningful, we think, for a lot of people, especially the ones that are feeling disenfranchised, right? They're feeling like, man, I don't have, what we also, used to call a tribe, right? But I don't have any place where I belong. And so, I think we felt like that as well at different times. So this might be one of the many places where you could go to get that sense of connection with people that are, thinkers, philosophers, artists, wanderers, right? Randy, you agree with that?
I do, Trace, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about that story, especially when you bring up this idea of tribe. Because both you and I worked in higher ed system for a long time, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions about people that work in higher ed.
Right.
I'll tell you, let me just give you a couple right off the bat. People think when you work for higher ed, you make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, you need to know that that's just not true. We make money like school teachers make money, and in fact, the reason why we can't hire school teachers to be professors is because if they stay a school teacher long enough, we can't compete with their salary.
Exactly.
So we can't bring them in.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining about work, though. Don't get me wrong, because institutions of higher learning are a place that's special for many reasons. But I'll tell you some things I was surprised about, Trace. I was surprised about how confining it was.
Mm-hmm.
In the, I assumed you would have freedom of thought and
Yeah.
speech.
Right.
I found that to be absolutely the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think whenever we find ourselves in a place where we're not given the freedom to think,
Yeah.
or we're discouraged from thinking and discouraged from speaking and exploring the potential that may be out there for us and for others,
Yeah.
it is important to find what you referred to as a tribe.
Yeah. Right.
Because I think it's in those numbers where that exploration really does happen.
Yeah.
And it's also where you find that freedom to think.
Yeah.
That freedom it's in that number. It's in just that fellow traveler
Mm-hmm.
or travelers.
Right.
That you find that strength to know that you're not going to be squashed by whatever that perceived power may be there. And that's part of what it means to be a nomad. Yeah, it means to be alone. Sure. It means to be an explorer. But it also means to gather, to hold the hands and the backs
Yeah.
and the supports of those around us. Not so we'll agree.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
Right.
But so we can individually explore where we need to go and where
Yeah.
we need to wind out. And I was surprised to find that in higher ed, that's not what the goal is. And it's just simply not. And that's okay. Higher ed is what it is. But I was surprised that I needed to find Nomads of the Noetic there.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was Nomads of the Noetic. And
Right.
it's simply not. And I think we all need to find that outlet and those people who will support us in that free thought
Yeah.
without judgment, because that's what stops our thought.
Yeah.
Is when we get in that space where someone will automatically stop us and say, no, that's wrong. You've gone off course.
Yeah.
Now you've committed heresy.
Right.
So you've got to come back into this line. And my question always is, well, I'm not sure who created that line, so I have a little bit of hard time trusting that. So anyway, I really see Nomads of the Noetic like this. This is what the picture I get of it.
Yeah.
I see, when I think about this concept of Jesus talking about, come to me as little children,
Yeah. Right.
because that's what I always feel like.
No.
I feel vulnerable. I feel threatened sometimes. I feel full of energy and thought, and it explodes.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that I'm just going to go nuts and crazy and off the deep end.
Right.
So why does Jesus say, come to me like that?
Yeah.
I think it's because that's the energy he can use to
Yeah.
drive me down a pathway.
Yeah.
So that's not a sermon. and I didn't mean that to be so. I just like the imagery of that. Come
Right.
as that child that's full of energy and that full of those questions,
Yep. Yep.
right? Of those really stupid questions,
Yeah.
the dumb ones about is there life on other planets or
Yep.
whatever that question is that, I asked my dad one time, where's heaven?
Yeah.
And I actually loved his answer because he pointed up. He said, it's up there somewhere.
Right.
That's as good an answer as I could give from anyone, but I really wanted to know. But that answer for the moment solved it for me.
You bet.
Okay, then later on we'll explore how far up there that is. And I'd probably
Exactly.
ask him again.
Yeah.
But it's those kinds of things that we don't have to be afraid. And of course my questions are different. I'm I'm older now. My questions are
Yeah.
more complex and probably more threatening. But I'm still that child. And
Yeah.
to
And,
have
and
that
that
support.
isn't that what we're really talking about right now too? Is there may be some people, who knows? They may be younger than us, they may be older than us, they may be the same age or otherwise. But whatever age and stage we're at in life, if we lose that sense of wonder and awe, right, about things that we don't have answers for, and if we lose those childlike questions, well, then basically we're just going through taking up airspace, right? We're being the sleepwalkers that Nietzsche talked about, right? And so, to me, this whole thing it's got to be about life as an adventure, not just an existence, you know and so having those kind of questions, and it's like, it's like poets and mystics and artists of all different forms, and musicians, scientists, everybody comes together sort of at a crossroad, right, at an intersection. And everybody blends in, whatever their own unique disciplines are. They can come from special ed, from counseling, from experimental nuclear physics, wherever it is, right? Bring in the bohemians, right? Bring in beatniks, bring in everybody, and have those kind of questions. Well, I wonder about this. And I think we're going to find out that there are a whole lot more similarities than what there are differences, but still having the differences. And that's what makes conversations interesting. And that's how we grow, I think, right?
So too.
Not like, the just preaching to the choir, no, you're having conversations with people that might have very, very different backgrounds from what we do. And to me, that's the adventure. That's what could really make this a fun process. And what's always kept my interest and my sense of wonder when you and I get together to talk, even if it's like this,
Right?
right? So I don't know. It's an interesting process. The other thing that I just kind of wanted to toss out too, when we talk about, you've worked a lot with people, and so have I, that have had, quote unquote disabilities, right? And those disabilities, may become handicaps, they may be disabilities, but turning something that society calls, or our professional worlds call, a disability or a handicap, helping people realize that it's not really, it's a gift, and that may be something we can help them find. Even like the shiny object syndrome, which is somewhat related to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We've worked with enough people over the decades to know that it's not that people can't focus on something, that they're just distracted by all of these little shiny objects. But if they find something that's meaningful, something that's purposeful, they can become the most, focused and creative people out there.
Hyperfocus.
There were more congressional Medal of Honor recipients who had ADHD, right,
That's
than
right.
any other group. So it's just a matter of how can we help people? How can other people that are out there help each other at this intersection, and say, let's take whatever society has said are challenges, right, our disabilities, and turn those into to gifts and talents.
Yeah. Potential.
Potential. It's
Yeah.
human potential, isn't it?
that is true, and I think that thought even goes even more extreme. And I think you look at the world of autism spectrum
Yeah.
disorder,
Right.
even psychotic disorders.
Yeah.
It's interesting to look how other cultures treat people with what we would call a disability. In India, for instance, they might see a person we might call a person with schizophrenia, and there they might call that a person who is on a pathway to find God
Right.
and closer to finding Him.
Right.
I don't know about that analogy or that conclusion because I don't know what I would look like if I was that close to finding God. However, if I was that much closer to the sun, I
Yeah.
would probably be burning.
Right.
So maybe I'm not sure, but I just think that there's a lot more to what's there than we've allowed ourselves to think about. And I think it's just too easy to wash people to the side and give them the excuse, well, you have this.
Right.
And I do know that people that have a higher intellectual functioning with autism would rather look at me and say, I'm the one that's deficient. And I
Right.
would
Yeah.
I would almost argue on their side
Yeah. Yeah.
because they gained some skill in that gives them some extra time, like they oftentimes aren't concerned about the feelings of others
Right.
or other trivial things that they think I'm looking and going through. So maybe they do have a pathway that's clear to get to something. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm just saying I don't know that we look at it deep enough. So
Right.
yeah, I think there's some interesting things out there. We've just drawn some conclusions that really are based on some pretty faulty theories,
Yeah.
or at least limited theories. Maybe not faulty, but limited is a better way to put that.
Yep.
And one more trace I'll say just briefly that
Ah.
I'll mention to you. Kohlberg, and I know we talked
Yep.
about it before, but
Yep.
Kohlberg described the idea of moral development, and he said, only people like Jesus and Mother Teresa were able to get to that highest level. But then later in his life, he described how there may be some people who can mystically go through to even higher levels without cognitive development.
Hmm.
So I know I've shared with you before that I've met people with cognitive development issues who seem to understand love better than me
Yeah.
and
Right.
seem to feel love deeper than me and without the cognitive power.
Yeah.
So how did they get there? I don't
Right.
know the answer to that question, but maybe Culver had some kind of insight going into that. I just know it's an unanswered question, and I think it's one of those things that I wonder about. Are there things in the universe that we don't understand? And
Yeah.
that's what nomads look for.
Yeah.
We want to find out, is there something there?
Yeah.
Is there a question I didn't ask because I was limited by
Right.
what, whatever discipline I'm in?
Yeah.
And you're the same as mine. Your field limits you to theorists, and mine too. And is there something beyond that? But I will say, at least in your field, you had some interesting ones who touched on the real extremes, and one who you taught me well, the meaning of life,
Yeah. It-
who he got out there on the edge.
yeah. Well, and see, one of the things is I'm listening to Randy, and I'm thinking about right now. Randy's talking to a camera, looking at me. I'm talking to a camera, looking at him. He's in Laredo or wherever he's at. I'm in the Texas Hill Country in Kerrville, and we don't know who we're talking to out there in the noetosphere, right? We don't know who you are yet. And so we're hoping that you're going to say this is a little bit interesting, but I can tell you this is sort of a snapshot. It's a microcosm of the kind of conversations that Randy and I had at the coffee shop over all those years. Wouldn't you agree, Randy?
I would agree.
And so so we may have had some idea of what are we supposed to be talking about on this first episode. And if you want to hear something that is very structured and very analytical and all scripted out, this probably isn't going to be the place for you, right? You
Right.
know, I think this is something that is a kind of a free flowing, have a general idea of what the topic is for the day. Like how did we get here? Why are we doing this Nomads of the Noetic? And why are we inviting you as people out there, possibly like us, to come in and be part of it? But this is as real as what it has been over all of these years. And some people, Randy, they either it either resonates with them or it doesn't, right?
Yep.
Uh,
The invitation is, I think you've given me this invitation before. You want to go down the rabbit hole?
yeah, that's it.
Come on.
Yeah, come on along. But what we hope for is once we decide, yeah, we're going to go down the rabbit hole for the adventure, with more questions than we have answers. But that process that we go through, it will be meaningful. It will be purposeful. It will be something that hopefully it'll be like standing on the edge of a cliff, right? Where we have one foot on solid ground and the other foot is kind of dangling over the edge, not knowing really what's down there. Does that kind of sound like what it is?
It is, except that there's a nomad that's got a rope.
Yep,
And all you got to do is hold on. We're not going to let you fall.
good point.
We're going to support you in this process. I
Yeah,
mean, that's the thing about nomads. And it's also the expectation that I have of you that are listening.
yeah,
Don't let me fall.
right, right.
We might go down the rabbit hole, but I'm tied on.
Yeah,
And and I'm not asking people to get me back on track. I'm asking you to keep me safe.
yep,
That's the deal. Or I don't know if safety's even the right word. I'm asking you to go with me,
yeah, yeah,
to be my companion in travel. That's it.
right.
It's as simple as hold my hand.
Yeah,
You know what? Let me know you're still there.
yeah,
You know what? That's where the loneliness comes.
yeah,
Is when you reach out and there's no one there.
right.
That's why we fear to explore these things, is because we reach out and nobody's there.
Yeah,
But I don't want people to have that fear. Hey,
yeah,
we're here. We none of us have to agree with anybody's exploration, but we're here. We'll engage you in that thought. You
yeah.
bet. We'll go with you.
See, I think that's a good point. Not only just from sort of an ethereal, noetic, transcendent, kind of perspective, but a real pragmatic, right? It's a real practical, down to earth reason, because we know that a lot of people who might gravitate to nomads of the noetic are sort of existentialists, right? Sometimes they're engaged in the wondering, hey, does not only does life have meaning, but does my life have meaning? And we've seen far too many people over the decades that come up with an answer of no to that, and they're no longer with us. They've taken their own lives, or they've checked out some other way. But just what you're saying is for those people, if any of those people would be listening to this podcast, this is a place where you could come and at least be able to share some experiences that chances are Randy and I have experienced, right? We both have backgrounds. right? And as we always say, you can't help somebody get further than where you've been yourself. And so some things maybe we have seen, and we can help people, uh, navigate some of those challenges that they've got in the real world, right?
We've had dark days too.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think I mean, to me, maybe that's the message about what nomads are, is that we don't do dark days alone. We walk through them and we find out where it takes us. And
yeah,
that's what brings the optimism that we're sharing
right.
to me, is because it really does all go back then. Because I am willing to show up today,
Hmm.
it goes back to that magic.
Yeah,
Because that's what we always find out, Trace, is we show up together, even on the darkest. And
yeah,
we've had some nasty days
right.
and had to discuss some hard things.
Yeah,
But showing up is what really creates the opportunity for magic, and it will happen.
yeah,
And you walk right through them. That's what I found to be true. And
right.
partially because you're willing, and partially because you have willing nomads with you.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Um, well, I think it'd be interesting to see what kind of questions people would actually have, about this. I think we've kind of put out there some general thoughts, right, about what Nomads of the Noetic's all about. Maybe there are things that people will wonder about when they get it. So we're doing it at one specific state moment, right? It's a state moment in time. But when somebody else sees it, right, and they experience it in their one moment, we've gone on to something else, right? Our life continues on. You'll be going to class, you'll be doing something else, so will I. But if people meet up at a particular point in time, and then be able to come back and say, hey, I've got questions about this. What about this? Can you guys talk about that? And we may say, look, if you're wondering about it, why don't you come in and join us on another podcast,
We
right?
love that.
We would love that. Yeah. And by doing that, it really does become, sort of this didactic teaching and learning, learning and teaching. Sometimes you're the teacher and, we're the students, and other times the roles are reversed. But I don't know about you, Randy. I mean, I'm not even sure that I see this as a teaching learning platform. To me, it's more of an art of wondering, kind
Oh
of
yeah.
platform.
Oh
You
yeah.
agree? Or?
I definitely agree. This is not about. Well, to me, it's not about me teaching anything.
Right, right.
Oh, I'm waiting for people to come in here and teach me, if
Yeah.
anything.
Yep.
It,
That's it.
oh, for me, it's about walking together with some other people about exploring things,
Yeah.
some of which I haven't even contemplated yet.
Right.
That's an exciting thing.
Yeah.
It's some questions I don't even know to ask.
Yeah.
Uh, However, and what I find fascinating about that is I want someone else with me to ask them, because I don't want to stumble upon them alone.
Right.
I don't want to wake up one day and go, "Oh my God, I never thought about that."
Yeah.
No, this is what this discussion is about to me. It's about, let's explore this. Let's wonder together.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and when I say wonder, I don't mean like Israel in the desert. I
Yeah.
mean wonder with our minds, and
Yeah.
that's much more directional than
Right.
uh, than it is aimless.
Yeah, and along with that too, that's part of making this distinction between something that's in that cognitive and affective, our thinking and our feeling dimension, psychical dimension, from something that is noetic, right?
Yeah,
You can think about things and you can experience what that feels like, but there's still something that's related to that, the epistemology, how do we know what we know? How do we think what we think? And a lot of times that's constrained by the cultures that we were raised in, right? By what we were taught. And so if we've got other people that are able to process with us and say, hey, did you ever think about this? Then all of a sudden there's that possibility for that transcendent, that noetic dimension to kick in and say, that might be what truth is, right? And I didn't see it before when I'm just trying to process it and think through something, in an academic kind of way. So
That's,
yeah,
that's the magic ladder.
that's the magic ladder. There, that's it. Yeah, yeah. So,
It
and
goes
and
back.
how many people can you fit on a magic ladder, right? That's it. Because we're not constrained by, we think about the ladder maybe as a metaphor, and we get these images in our mind of, that's what a ladder looks like. It's going up to the top of a building. But it's not that, and it is that, right? But it's not. So you could have an infinite number of people on one rung of the ladder
Right.
making this journey upward,
That
right?
ladder's really wide.
That's it. That's it. So I don't know. To me, it's really an exciting time with as crazy as everything is out there in the quote unquote real world, right? I think there's something equally crazy going on in the real world that's transcendent to us that we can't really get into touch with just using our five senses, right? It's got to be something else that kicks in that helps us to experience something that's beyond the craziness and goes into stuff that we can't even hardly imagine.
And I think that's the key that gives us the wisdom to walk through the day.
Yeah, right.
So we have
Yep,
to we have to do that journey
agreed.
so I can walk through the day
Yeah.
and
And
be
and it's,
beneficial to the world.
yeah. And to me, that's a great place to end this first podcast.
I agree.
If you agree,
I agree.
all
It's
right.
nice to see all these beautiful people watching us.
They are out there, and just know, Randy and I came up with this many years ago, right? The concept of you are irreplaceable. You remember that, Randy?
Oh yeah.
Yep. And that was in association with a suicide awareness program that we did, and it was called a logo walk, right? Anyway, we may talk about that in
That
another
may
podcast,
that may
right?
be the next one.
Yep. But I agree with Randy. It's a good time to say adios to you all. You are irreplaceable, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. What do we think about, Randy? Once a week, we're going to do a podcast.
Once a week.
Once a week. All
Once a
right.
week. Sounds good to me. Many blessings to all.
Likewise. See ya.